back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have everybody here on this Wednesday, December 27th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today, but before I get into that, I just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So with that, let's get right into what we are going to talk about for today. So starting off the show, we're going to talk about the Holiday Classic from Sunday. We'll talk about the Patriots upsetting the Broncos and really putting a dent in the Broncos' playoff chances, basically ending them, in my opinion. So we'll get into that in a second. Then in the second part of the show, we'll talk about the Detroit Lions-Vikings game, the Lions winning the NFC North for the first time in 30 years. So we'll get into that. Then we're going to talk about, in the third part of the show, the Browns winning again, improving to 10-5 on the season. They're in prime position to clinch a playoff spot this week. And then in the final part of the show, we'll talk about the Buccaneers-Jaguars game. Two teams heading in different directions right now, as the Bucs win once again, 30-12, and the Jags lose again. So we'll get into that as well. So let's get right into the first topic, which is talking about Sunday's game between the Patriots and the Broncos. So this was the Holiday Classic that they kept hyping up leading into it. And it actually turned out to be a good game. So can't really complain there. Obviously, it's with two teams that, many years ago, you had Peyton Manning and Tom Brady going at it in AFC Championship games. But now you got Bailey Zappi going against Russell Wilson. So very different. And the Patriots were able to get the win. So we'll kind of go through how this all unfolded. So the Patriots got the ball to start the game. And I actually missed this play because we were having dinner at this point. But the Patriots started off with the ball. And on the first play, Zappi gets sacked, loses the ball, and the Broncos are set up at the New England 6-yard line. So I'm thinking, okay, I took the Patriots with the points. This is not looking good. Then the Broncos turned it over on downs. They actually went for it on 4th and goal. Weren't able to get it. So then the Patriots got the ball back. So no harm, no foul there. Then both teams punted. Then the Broncos, they finally went down the field. They went 5 plays. Well, they went 5 plays, 25 yards. And they got a touchdown. Javonte Williams with 3 yards out scored, so that put the Broncos up 7-0. Then the Patriots answered with a field goal. They went 13 plays, 61 yards, 6 minutes, 45 seconds of time of possession. They got a field goal. Chad Ryland, who actually had a rough game but then redeemed himself, hit a 33-yard field goal, so that put them down by a score of 7-3. So then the Broncos then fumbled. Javonte Williams ended up fumbling in the second quarter. Didn't lead to anything. The Patriots punted. Then the Broncos punted. And then both teams missed field goals to end the first half. Chad Ryland, he missed a field goal, a 47-yarder. And then Will Lutz from 57 yards. He ended up missing. So at the half, It was 7-3. So yeah, it just wasn't looking like it was going to be a good game. It was going to be very low scoring. Then the Broncos punted to open up the second half. Then the Patriots went 5 plays, 70 yards, almost 3 minutes of time possession down the field, and Bailey Zappi connected with Ezekiel Elliott for a 15-yard touchdown. Ryland missed the extra point. Both teams punted. Patriots then scored again. Zappi connected with Mike Gesicki. There was no Hunter Henry, no Juju Smith-Schuster in this game. So Gesicki had to step up, and he did. An 11-yard touchdown, so that put them up 16-7. And then the Broncos actually ended up losing the ball at one point, and the Patriots ended up capitalizing on that. So at one point it was 23-7, which wasn't good. And again, it looked great because I had the Patriots in the game. And the Patriots punted. Broncos then got a touchdown to make it 23-15. Russell Wilson connected with Marvin Mims for a 47-yard reception, and then that set up a touchdown to Krul. So that made it 23-13. Went for 2. They got it. Then the Broncos, after the Patriots punted, they tied the game. Russell Wilson connected with Johnson for a 21-yard touchdown. They got the 2-point conversion, and that tied the game. Then both teams punted. And I thought this game was going to go into overtime, but that ended up not happening. Zappi, big play to Devontae Parker for 27 yards. They eventually got into somewhat of a field goal range because we didn't know if Ryland was going to hit it. And he did a 56-yard field goal to win the game. And the Patriots improved to 4-11. Broncos dropped to 7-8. And for the stats, Zappi, 25-33, 256 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, did have the fumble. The Patriots really didn't run the ball. 59 yards was the total amount of rushing yards. Zeke was their leading rusher with 27. Demario Douglas was their leading receiver, 74 yards. Devontae Parker at 65. Zeke had their receiving touchdown. Keep forgetting that Jalen Reagor's on the Patriots. But yeah, so he was involved. And then as for the Broncos, I mean, Russell Wilson had a decent game, 25-37, 238 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Broncos only ran the ball for 83 yards. Jaleel McLaughlin, he was their leading rusher with 37 yards. Marvin Mims was their leading receiver. He had 63 yards. Brandon Johnson, he had 3 for 47 in a touchdown. Jerry Jeudy had 3 for 44. Cortland Sutton actually got hurt in this game. He had to leave, which that was a big loss there. But yeah, Javonte Williams, Marvin Mims, both fumbling. Russell Wilson actually fumbled a couple times, but they didn't lose it. So, but yeah, that's a tough loss for the Broncos. I mean, credit to them for being able to come back into the game and tying it, but the defense couldn't stop Zappi and the offense. I mean, I honestly was surprised that Ryland made the field goal. I didn't expect that was going to happen, but it did. And yeah, that really hurts the Broncos' playoff chances. It really does. And this was a team that started off the season 1-5, looked like they were going to go nowhere, and then they put it together, and it looked like, hey, maybe they'll be able to squeak in, but now with these last 2 losses, getting blown out by the Lions last Saturday, and now losing to the Patriots, I mean, kind of seals their fate here. I mean, they really need a lot of help down the stretch. I mean, of course, they got to win out here. They got the Raiders last week of the season. They got the Chargers coming up. So those are 2 winnable games. I think they could beat the Chargers, but the way the Raiders defense has been playing, and the Raiders are not a bad team at home. I think that's going to be a tough game for them to win. So you got that, and then on top of that, you need the Colts to lose out. You need the Texans to lose. It's going to be tough. Actually, now that I think about it, did they get eliminated from playoff contention? Or are they still in it? Because I feel like because you got the Colts in the, they haven't been eliminated yet. So their chances are down to 1.4%. But I feel like they need, because the Colts and the Texans play each other to end the year. So, yeah, I don't know how that's going to work. I mean, I guess you need the Texans to lose out because they have the tiebreaker over you. The Steelers, they need to lose out. The Bengals, they need to lose out. The Raiders, as well. Well, the Raiders and the Colts play each other, so I guess you're rooting for the Colts in that game. Actually, no, you're rooting for the Raiders in that game, and then you have to beat them last game of the regular season. Basically they need a lot for them to make the playoffs, so it's not going to happen. Because right now, looking at the AFC playoff picture, I mean, I think the Bills get in, the Browns are going to get in, and it's really going to come down to that final wild card spot. And if C.J. Stroud comes back, I like the Texans' chances of making the playoffs. But we'll see. It's going to come down to, I think, right at this moment, the Texans and the Colts. But C.J. Stroud needs to come back because they really miss him. And we'll talk about that later in the show. But, it's just unfortunate for the Broncos because, they gave their fans a lot of hope. And that hope is pretty much gone. And the Patriots, I mean, listen, they've been playing spoiler. They beat the Steelers. They beat the Broncos. At least they're showing some fight at the end of the year. I saw something that said that Belichick doubts his future in New England. So, I mean, this is pretty much it, I think, for him. Even though I did a segment a couple weeks ago on, it's pretty much it. They're saying that he's done in New England. But then it came out that it wasn't confirmed. But we'll just have to see. But yeah, I think his fate's pretty much sealed. Him and the Patriots are going to part ways after this year. And listen, the Patriots are kind of hurting their draft situation right now with them winning a couple games here. I mean, they're still going to take a quarterback. It just depends on who it's going to be. Because I think now the Cardinals jumped them. Now they're the number 2 pick. It's going to be interesting what some of these teams do, because if you got the Bears and the Cardinals there, you have Fields and Kyler Murray. Are those guys going to stay there, or are they going to move off of them? We'll see. But this game actually turned out to be decent, even though it wasn't star-studded. Again, you had Bailey Zappi against Russell Wilson. And again, it looked like the Broncos were going to pull it out, but, Belichick continues to own Sean Payton. So, yeah, that's pretty much it when talking about this game. Again, the Broncos I went over it the best as I could, but the Broncos basically need, a lot of help in these final 2 weeks to make the playoffs. And again, they got to win out, which, again, I think they could beat the Chargers, but I think it'll be a tough game with how the Chargers played on Saturday against the Bills. Now without Brandon Staley, and I lost both Saturday games in the spread pool. And again, I even said, I'm like, I don't like taking all these favorites, but I'm like, I don't know which ones to switch. Well, the Saturday games were the ones to switch because, they both didn't go good. So, the Broncos got to win out, and they need every team ahead of them to lose. So, I don't. Unfortunately, especially with this loss, because I thought they would still win. I thought the game was going to go to overtime, and Patriots ended up getting into field goal range, and Ryland ended up making that 56-yarder, which he missed an extra point. You didn't really expect him to make it, but he did. So credit to him. So when we come back from our first break of the show, we are going to now talk about the Lions winning the NFC North for the first time in 30 years. So we'll talk about the game and what lies ahead for the Detroit Lions. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we're going to talk about the Lions. The Detroit Lions winning the NFC North for the first time since 1993. It's been a long time. Congratulations to them, first of all. It's been a long time, as you could tell. This division's been won by every other team since I've been alive. The Packers, obviously, with Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre. You had some years where the Vikings would win it. Of course, the Bears have won it as well. When they had Khalil Mack the first year, and Mitchell Trubisky. At least, going back, with my, time watching football. And then, of course, also them, back when, the Packers won the Super Bowl as a wild card team. You had the Bears that year as well when they played each other in the NFC Championship game. So, the Lions, they had some good years, with Stafford, but, they haven't won a playoff game. Again, the division. But now they got one thing checked off. They won the division. And a lot of people did pick them to win the division this year. It's probably going to be between them and the Vikings, but, it ended up being the Lions just because, the Vikings got off to that rough start, and then Kirk Cousins gets hurt, and now, they're kind of in disarray with the quarterback situation. The Josh Dobbs insanity run ended. Now you got Nick Mullins in there, and Nick Mullins did throw for a ton of yards on Sunday, but the turnovers were the problem in the game. So we'll go through the game first. So the Lions, they picked up a win against the Vikings, which is big. And, of course it's big because they won the division because of that. 30-24, the final score ended up being. They scored a touchdown to open the game. 14 plays, 75 yards down the field. And that was a David Montgomery 1-yard touchdown. Then the Vikings answered with a touchdown of their own. Ty Chandler from 2 yards out, so that made it 7-7. Then the Lions fumbled, and then Nick Mullins threw a pick. Lions punted. So then we go to the second quarter. Lions went up 10-7. Nick Mullins threw another interception. Then the Lions, they turned that into a touchdown. Jahmyr Gibbs from 14 yards out. He continues his great rookie season. And then the Vikings, right before the end of the first half, they scored a touchdown. Great catch by Justin Jefferson, a 26-yard touchdown. So that made it 17-14. Then the Vikings, they opened up the second half, scoring a touchdown, making it 21-17. That was set up by a 47-yard reception by KJ Osborne, which led to a KJ Osborne 6-yard touchdown. So that made it 21-17. Then the Lions, they answered with a touchdown to make it 23-21. Jared Goff connecting with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Lions then got another touchdown. Jahmyr Gibbs from 3 yards out. So then we go to the fourth quarter. Nick Mullins, another pick. Lions punted. Vikings kicked a field goal. Lions punted again. And then there was another interception in the game. Nick Mullins ended up finishing. So these are Nick Mullins' stats. 22 of 36, 411 yards. That's good, right? 2 touchdowns, but 4 interceptions. Vikings only ran the ball for 17 yards. Justin Jefferson had a game, 6 receptions for 141 yards and a touchdown. KJ Osborne had 5 for 95 and a touchdown. TJ Hawkinson, 4 for 58. Now, he's out for the rest of the season. ACL injury. Just terrible news there. One of the best tight ends in the NFL. And that's a huge weapon for the Vikings. And, he's going to be out the rest of the year. And this is late in the year, too, which is unfortunate. So they're really going to miss him. Vikings just can't catch a break with these injuries. He's going to be out. So now we go to the Lions stats. Jared Goff, 30 of 40, 257 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. The Lions ran the ball for 143 yards in total. Jahmyr Gibbs had 2 rushing touchdowns. He had 80 yards rushing. David Montgomery had 55 and a touchdown. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 12 for 106 and a touchdown when you go to the receiving side of things. Jameson Williams had 5 for 43. Sam Laporta only had 3 for 18. Khalif Raymond had 2 for 29. Jahmyr Gibbs had 4 for 20. But yeah, Lions ended up picking up the win there. The one thing with them, now, first of all, before we get into my concerns, I mean, again, long time since they won the NFC North. And again, congratulations to them. This game wasn't easy by any means, but they get the win here. And listen, they got a chance to have a top 2 seed in the NFC. I don't know if they're going to get that. They need Philadelphia to lose one of their last 2 games, which I don't think is happening. I mean, if the 49ers lose again, maybe they could jump them, but I don't think that's happening either. They're going to have a top 3 seed. So they're going to host a playoff game. Now, what's crazy is they could be hosting the Rams, which I really hope ends up happening, because then you're going to have Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff facing off against their former teams. You're going to have Stafford returning to Detroit for the first time since the trade, and I think that would be a great playoff game. So I hope we get that. My concerns with the Lions, and they kind of fall into that category of kind of being fraudulent, because they have these games, like, they go to play the Bears in Chicago and Jared Goff struggles. The defense is the issue here. Now they're going to be playing Dallas on Saturday in Jerry World, and it's going to be a really tough game. Because now Dallas, you can move the ball on Dallas's defense, but if the offensive line doesn't protect Jared Goff, it's going to be a long day for the Lions. The defense really is the problem for me. The offense definitely could be inconsistent at times, but they got a great 1-2 punch at running back. The receivers, Amon-Ra St. Brown is, a very underrated receiver that doesn't really get talked about that much. They got a great rookie tight end. You'd like to see them get somebody else step up besides Amon-Ra St. Brown. They were hoping Jameson Williams would be that guy. They traded for Donovan Peoples-Jones, but I feel like he's been a non-factor. You don't even hear about him. You also got Josh Reynolds and Khalif Raymond. These guys can make some plays, but there's no, definitive number 2 option other than Sam Laporta. I'm talking about just receivers to Amon-Ra St. Brown. And Jared Goff has the tendency at times to turn the ball over, But I think the major concern for me is the defense. Because, again, like, you let Nick Mullins throw for over 400 yards against you, but, you lucked out because it's Nick Mullins and he threw 4 picks. So that's my concerns with the Lions. That's why, if they got to go to Philly, if they got to go to San Francisco, if they get out of the first round, I think that's as far as they're going to go. Philly, they're going to be able to move the ball against, I feel like, because, Philly's secondary, we saw it on Monday against the Giants. Not good. Not good. So, and again, listen, I still think the best team, in the NFC is, of course, the 49ers. I know, losing to the Ravens was tough, but they're still by far the best team, in the NFC. So I think whoever goes up against them in the NFC is not going to come out on top. It's going to be them, but who knows? Who knows? But for the Lions, if they're able to make the playoffs, well, they made it, but if they're able to win a playoff game, and that's as much as they do this year. Still a successful season. This team is one of the best teams, in the NFL. When they're clicking, especially on offense. They got a lot to build on, even if they don't get as far as they want to, because again, besides winning the division, there's other things that they, can do. But I think this team is like a top 5 team. It's like around there. Again, if they can fix their defense, this team is going to be really good for a long time. They got a lot of young players on this team, so they're only going to continue to get better. It's just I think their flaws are going to be what hurts them. Sorry, I'm about to hold back a sneeze. Again, that always happens at least like once or twice during the stream. So, but yeah, I think the flaws are going to be what ultimately hurts them. So, but I mean, I'm happy for them. That's going to be one of the teams I'll be rooting for in the playoffs. I give Dan Campbell a lot of credit. Really turned this team around. The culture, it didn't look good at one point last year, but the Lions were able to finish off the season strong, finish at 9-8, and now they got one of the best records in the NFL. Obviously, they aren't looked at as the best team, but they're up there. They're up there. I mean, you got the 49ers and the Ravens in their own tiers, and then you got the rest of the other teams. So, and we'll see what they do against Dallas on Saturday. This could be a very high-scoring game. It could be a blowout. I'm leaning towards it could be a blowout, possibly. But again, do the opposite of what I do. But we'll see, because you got Dallas and the Lions, and they're kind of in that same tier. I mean, I for me personally, I still think Dallas is better. I mean, how I'd rank the teams, it's it's the 49ers, then it's Dallas, then you got the Eagles, and then you got the Lions. So, based off of how the Eagles have been playing. But, the Lions could move the ball against the Cowboys, but they don't have time. If Goff doesn't have time to throw, and Micah Parsons is back there constantly, and that defensive front, it's going to be a long day. And we'll obviously preview that on Friday. There actually will be no Monday night game, so it's just Saturday, and then the following week. I mean, I don't know what they're going to do. I think they'll move games because they have games on Saturday. They'll move. Just have all the games on Sunday. I don't know why we got to put games on Saturday because these have playoff implications. But that's what the NFL decides to do. So. But before we go into our second break of the show, once again, I just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So, and I clicked on the wrong thing. When we get back from our second break of the show, we're going to talk about the Browns winning again, improving to 10-5 on the season with their win over the Texans. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to talk about the Browns and them picking up another win against the Houston Texans. The Texans were without C.J. Stroud in this game. They really need to get him back. He's been out the last couple of games with a concussion. But yeah, the Browns winning 36-22 in this game. It was funny. They took out Joe Flacco and then they had to put him back in because the Texans were starting to make the game close. But yeah, they opened up the game with the 4-play, 59-yard drive. Flacco connected with Amari Cooper for 53 yards. Jerome Ford took a direct snap and took it into the end zone from 4 yards out. So that made it 7-0 Browns. Then both teams just punted the rest of the first quarter. Then the Browns, they went on the 3-play, 90-yard drive to make it 14-0. Flacco connecting with Amari Cooper for a 75-yard touchdown. So that made it 14-0. Then Dameon Pierce ran back a punt return, right? Yeah, he ran back a 98-yard punt return, I believe, or kickoff return. So that made it 14-7. The Browns actually were without Dustin Hopkins. He got hurt in this game, so they had no kicker. So they had to go for 2. Flacco connected with David Njoku for a 21-yard touchdown, so that made it 20-7. And then they brought in DTR to run the 2-point conversion. He got it. Then Flacco threw a pick. Then Case Keenum threw a pick. Then Flacco threw another interception. So we had 3 straight interceptions, and that ended the first half. Then in the third quarter, the Texans punted. The Browns then went 18 plays, 94 yards, almost 10 minutes of time of possession down the field. And Flacco connected with Amari Cooper for a 7-yard touchdown, so that made it 28-7. Then Case Keenum threw another pick. Right, was it Case Keenum? Because then they switched to Davis Mills at one point. Yeah, so Case Keenum threw a pick. Browns got another touchdown out of that. Kareem Hunt from 1 yard out. And then Flacco connected with Amari Cooper for the 2-point conversion. So that made it 36-7. And then the Texans, they got a couple of touchdowns in this fourth quarter. Davis Mills connected with Nico Collins for a 5-yard touchdown. Then they got another touchdown. He connected with Beck for a 1-yard touchdown. So 36-22 ended up being the final score. And then the numbers for the game: Joe Flacco went 27-42 for 368 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Browns only ran the ball for 54 yards. Jerome Ford had a touchdown, obviously. Kareem Hunt as well. Amari Cooper, great game. 11 receptions, 265 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So if you started him in fantasy, good for you. If you didn't, that's unfortunate. And then David Njoku, he had 6 receptions for 44 yards and a touchdown. Again, he's had a nice rapport with Joe Flacco since Flacco stepped in to be the quarterback. So those are the Browns numbers. Then for the Texans, rough day for Case Keenum, 11 for 17, 62 yards, no touchdowns, 2 picks. Davis Mills came in relief, 15-32, 149 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Devin Singletary was their leading rusher with 44 yards. Dalton Schultz was their leading receiver, 8 receptions for 61 yards. Noah Brown had 3 for 38. Nico Collins had 4 for 18 and a touchdown. But yeah, I mean, the Texans, they really miss C.J. Stroud. So hopefully they can get him back because, the Texans, they still got a chance to make the playoffs. Now, I agree that the Texans are doing the right thing by not rushing him back because this is their young quarterback. This is their future, and they don't want to rush him back and he ends up, getting, seriously hurt, getting hurt even more, and then who knows. But hopefully he's back this week because I like the Texans to make the playoffs out of the teams that are fighting for it. It's going to come down to probably them and the Colts. That last game of the regular season. Now in week 17 they have the Titans coming up at home. So if they can get Stroud back, I think they could win that game, and then you go into Indianapolis and you see what happens. Because the Colts got the Raiders, and the Raiders, they still got a chance of making the playoffs too. So I think there's like 24 teams that are still alive. I could be wrong; it might have went down, but yeah, there's 24 teams I think left at making the playoffs. So listen, these last 2 weeks are going to be insane. So we'll see how that goes. But as for the Browns, I mean, they continue to roll. And I think if they win against the Jets, they clinch a playoff spot. So, and the Jets are going to have to start Trevor Siemian again. And listen, if it wasn't for the Commanders, giving the Jets the game in the beginning until they took out Sam Howell and put in Jacoby Brissett, who knows how that game goes. The Browns are not going to do what the Commanders did. The Jets are going to have to, keep up with what the Browns are doing. And listen, I think the Browns, they're going to win on Thursday. They're going to win tomorrow night, and they're going to be in. And we'll see what happens with Joe Flacco making the playoffs again. I'm curious to see how that all plays out because, Flacco looked like he was basically done, with the Jets. And then he steps in for the Browns, and he's looked good. Now, the issue is the interceptions. He's thrown a lot of picks. But the Browns are still able to win because of it. It really, they came back against the Bears. They were basically in control of this game, until the Texans started coming back. So they had to put Flacco back in, supposedly. But I did not think the Texans were gonna, mount a comeback, especially with what's going on with their quarterback situation and there being no C.J. Stroud. So, I'm curious to see, how the Browns are going to look in the playoffs. It's unfortunate that they don't have Nick Chubb again because they really didn't run the ball in this game, but I mean they didn't have to because Amari Cooper just exploded for over 260 yards in this game, or right it was like what was it 245? Right, 245 was the amount of receiving yards. I mean I just looked at it. Oh no, yeah, 265. Yeah, no, so I was right the first time. But he's in a good. He's in a good situation. He's got a nice connection with David Njoku. Him and Amari Cooper. I mean, they had a great game. He's in a good situation, and that's why with the Jets. I mean, it was bad. He looked like he couldn't play at all. But now he's in a good situation. You got good weapons. You got a decent head coach, I would say. A good offensive line. Running game, is okay. Obviously, if Nick Chubb was there, I mean, they'd be even better, the Browns. But, that's not the case at the moment. Well, until next year. I did see something that said, what does this mean for Flacco for next year? I mean, I don't know. I thought he did come out and say that again, I saw it on TikTok, so it's probably not true. But I thought it said, I thought he did say that he was pretty much done once, this year was over. But we'll see. I mean, maybe he feels like, I could be a backup for a team, or stay with the Browns and be the backup for them. I don't see why not, because he's still got that strong arm. I mean, we saw it on full display, those passes to Amari Cooper. But, I mean, as long as he's in a good situation. Like, if you go back to, the Jets with their offensive line issues and, and their coaching staff, you're not going to have the same success. Even though the Jets are bringing back everybody for Aaron Rodgers. The Jets have their issues, their offensive line. They got to fix that. Because if you don't fix that, Rodgers is going to get hurt again, and then you're going to be back to square one. So, but, yeah, I mean, credit to what the Browns have been able to do, really. I mean, because once Deshaun Watson went down, it pretty much looked like that was the end for them. But they've been able to keep it together, and now they're 10-5, and they're, on the doorstep of making the playoffs once again. And listen, you look at the AFC, I mean, they could beat anybody. I think they could go on the road and beat the Ravens. I mean, they did it already this year. Now, it's going to be different because you got Deshaun Watson. You don't have Deshaun Watson, now it's Joe Flacco. So, and that defense, we saw what they did to Brock Purdy. Joe Flacco, Brock Purdy can move around a little bit, but he's not like, Josh Allen or Mahomes. But now you got Joe Flacco, who's just a pocket passer. I mean, and Flacco's been throwing interceptions. The Ravens can take advantage of that. But again, that's a division rival. These teams know each other well. I think the Browns could give a lot of teams problems in the playoffs. I really do. Again, it's going to be tough. If they got to go play Miami, in Miami, it's going to be tough, having to deal with Tyreek Hill and Waddle and all those track stars, in the running game too with Mostert and Achane. But I give him a good shot. I definitely think, even with Flacco, like they could beat anybody. It's just they got to limit the turnovers because again, that's the issue. But I mean, I really hope we get to see Flacco play against the Ravens in Baltimore because that would be insane. That would be insane. We see him go back to Baltimore. We might see Stafford going back to Detroit. That would be fun. I mean, these playoffs are going to be a lot of fun because you really just have no idea like who's going to win. I think most people think right now it's still going to be Ravens 49ers. I mean, those are the two best teams. But for everybody else, I mean, this wild card round coming up in a few weeks, it's going to be insane because you really just have no idea. Anything can happen. But I like the Browns going into the postseason. But we'll see how they perform. Because they're going to be going on the road. It's going to be tough, but listen, I think they got the team to again, they're going to give teams problems. I mean, if they got to go on the road and play, Kansas City maybe, or Jacksonville. I mean, I think they could beat both of those teams. I mean, they beat Jacksonville. I mean, look at how the Chiefs are playing. I think right now anybody could go into Arrowhead and in these playoffs and maybe beat the Chiefs because we might be seeing the Bills go there. So, I mean, I would probably still take the Chiefs over the Browns just because I don't know if I'd be able to pick against the Chiefs, but the Browns could definitely go in there and win. They almost did last time, but obviously Mahomes got hurt in that game, and that was a different Chiefs team at the time. Now the Chiefs look like a very different team. But I think it's just one of those years that, and they'll figure it out. I don't think this is something that you got to worry about long term. I mean, it's not like Patrick Mahomes is just going to fall off and, not be what he was, prior to this year. They're going to figure it out. But it's just one of those years. It's tough to maintain the amount of success. Like, look at the Patriots, what they were able to do for years. It's tough to do that. I mean, the Chiefs are still going to be in the playoffs. It's just they might be one and done. But, yeah, with the Browns, though, we'll see what they could do. But I love the Joe Flacco story. That's a story I could get behind. I just, with Tommy Cutlets, I just saw that, I wasn't, my friend just said that it looks like Tyrod Taylor is going to be the starter. So, the Tommy Cutlets era is over. It looks like, at least, for this year. I mean, he could be the backup, but the Joe Flacco story is a story that I can get behind because that's with the team that's actually going somewhere. With the Giants, I mean, people are like, oh, they can make the playoffs if they win out. They're not winning out. And look what happened. They've lost their last 2 games. Probably not winning another game this year. So, but yeah, the Browns, they win and they're in. So, with that being said, we're going to take our final break of the show, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and them winning big over the Jacksonville Jaguars 30-12, and they are in prime position to win the NFC South. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we're going to talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and them, getting another win against the Jaguars, 30-12. They dominated this game from start to finish. And listen, I didn't know who to pick in this game because, Trevor Lawrence, obviously banged up. Another quarterback that was, dealing, with being in concussion protocol. But then he ended up being cleared to play. Now he got hurt again. I think shoulder injury now. So who knows if he's going to play next week. And then obviously he got hurt in the Bengals game. But he was able to come back from that. So it's been a rough go for the Jags. At one point they were 6-2, and things were looking great, but now it's not so much. They lost to the Bengals, the Browns, the Ravens, and now the Bucs. They got the Panthers coming up at home. So even if Trevor Lawrence doesn't play, they could still win that game, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough because I don't trust C.J. Beathard at all. And then you're at Tennessee to finish off the year. But as for the Bucs, I mean, they're on a roll right now. I mean, they started off the game, they went down the field, kicked a field goal, then Trevor Lawrence threw a pick. Baker Mayfield connected with Mike Evans for his first touchdown, a 3-yard touchdown to make it 10-0. Then the Jags went down the field, missed a field goal. McManus has had a rough stretch, so then the Bucs went down the field, kicked another field goal. Trevor Lawrence threw another pick. Bucs turned that into a touchdown. This was a great play. Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans for 22 yards. What a catch by Evans in the end zone. Go check that out if you haven't seen that. Then the Jags punted, and that was the end of the first half. Then the Jags fumbled. And the Bucs turned that into 7 more points. So Rachaad White from 2 yards out. So that made it 27-0. Then it was 30-0 at one point, and then Trevor Lawrence eventually was taken out of the game because he got hurt. But he did connect with Calvin Ridley for an 18-yard touchdown, so that made it 30-6. Then the Jags fumbled in the fourth quarter. Bucs turned it over on downs. Jags turned it over on downs. Bucs punted. And then C.J. Beathard connected with Calvin Ridley for a 1-yard touchdown, and it was 30-12 the final score. So let's look at the stats. Trevor Lawrence went 17-29, 211 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. C.J. Beathard 11 for 15, 94 yards and a touchdown. Jags really didn't run the ball in this game because they were down by so much. Evan Ingram had 10 receptions for 95 yards. Calvin Ridley had 6 for 90 and 2 touchdowns. Trevor Lawrence lost a fumble in this game. Ingram fumbled in this game. And then as for the Bucs, I mean, Baker Mayfield continues to roll, 26-35, 283 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Rachaad White had 20 carries for only 39 yards and a touchdown. So again, that's something the Bucs continue to struggle with, is running the football. But it hasn't really mattered because all they've been doing is winning. Mike Evans had 7 receptions for 86 yards and 2 touchdowns. Chris Godwin had 6 for 78. Trey Palmer had 4 for 42. Rachaad White had 6 for 39 or 38. Devin White had an interception in this game. Antoine Winfield had an interception in this game. Winfield also had a fumble recovery. But yeah, the Bucs they dominated this game. 4 sacks in the game as well. Chase McLaughlin went 3 for 3. All around solid game for the Bucs. 8-7, and yeah, they're in prime position to win the NFC South, which is the division that we just had no idea who was going to win it. I said, very early on, I thought the Bucs were going to win it. I was hoping for it. Then it didn't look like that. It looked like the Falcons were going to be the team that was going to win it. Then it looked like it was going to be either between the Saints and the Falcons. Now it's the Bucs and the Saints, because we got a big game this week coming up between the Bucs and the Saints. Falcons did win big against the Colts with Heineke at quarterback, but this is really going to decide the division between the Bucs and the Saints. And I like the Bucs to win. I do. They are really on a roll. And, again, very happy for Baker Mayfield and what he's been able to do. Because it looked like, this is his last chance. And he really has put together a good season. He almost has 3,600 yards passing. He's going to get close to to 4,000 yards passing. But the touchdown interception ratio is solid, 26-8. Him and Mike Evans have had a really great connection this year. I mean, this team, they get in. We'll see what happens. I mean, they're going to play against either Dallas or Philly. But enjoy for the moment. Take it game by game. But they really have been clicking for weeks now. I mean, they've now, this is now what, their fourth straight win. And they lost a lot of close games before that. I mean, they lost that 2-point game to the Texans. I mean, if they didn't let C.J. Stroud go down the field, I mean, you win that game. You lost to the Falcons by 3. You lost to the Colts by 7. They lost a lot of close games. I mean, it looked like they were out of it. It looked like Baker was gonna, be one and done in Tampa, but it looks like it's possible that he's gonna, stick around maybe for at least one more year, which I hope he does. Mike Evans continues to dominate this year. His total stats on the season, you can pull those up. So he's got 73 receptions, 1,163 yards, and 13 touchdowns. I mean, last year I think he only had 3 touchdowns. So he really has been on a roll. Him and Baker, again, they've had a nice connection this year. Rashad White, not as effective as a runner, but as a pass catcher, he's been solid. You still got Chris Godwin there, the young tight ends, and you still got, some of the pieces from the playoff run back in 2020. So I mean, listen, this team is still solid. You got to rebuild this team still, but listen, if they're able to get into the playoffs, I mean, this is a good step forward for them. And for Baker, hopefully this is his new home, and he could stay and maintain that starting job with the Bucs for years to come. But I think you just got to take it, game by game. But he has had a great year. So we'll see what happens. But right now you got the Saints coming up, and then you got the Panthers after that. So, I think you win your final 2 games, but I'm not going to guarantee it because the Bucs could easily lose these next 2 games. But they have been playing really good football as of late. So I'm confident that they could finish it off and clinch the NFC South. And then we'll see what happens when they make the playoffs. But again, this game, 2 teams going in very different directions. For the Jags, I mean, they're still in first place. Because the Colts and the Texans, are helping them out by losing. But, listen, eventually C.J. Stroud is going to come back. And the Colts, I mean, listen, they could definitely win, one of their final 2 games. The Jags, they need Trevor Lawrence to be healthy, but who knows if he's going to be if he's going to be right. And they could find themselves missing the playoffs. So, you hope that's not the case, but it could very well happen because you got so many 8-7 teams. You got the Colts, the Texans, the Steelers, and the Bengals. And then on top of that, you got the Raiders and the Broncos who are 7-8. So you can end up being tied with them if you drop out of first place. So, we'll see. We're gonna see what happens, but it's definitely gonna be interesting. It's definitely gonna be interesting down the stretch. I mean, these final 2 games are gonna be wild. But yeah, I mean, I ended up switching to the Jags just because in the spread pool because I was like, well, Trevor Lawrence is playing and I think they're due for a win, right? Well, gotta wait a little bit. I mean, that's another team that you can kind of look at as being a little bit fraudulent. I don't know what happened to Travis Etienne. He really hasn't been doing much lately either. He was tearing it up, and then recently hasn't been doing much. But I still look at this team as being a good team, but they got their flaws. They never really found consistency, and you're kind of seeing it now that that's hurt them because who knows if that now we don't even know if they're going to win the division now. But I mean, if Trevor Lawrence is able to play, I mean, he's been able to avoid all these injuries and play. So I feel like he'll play next week. But how effective is he going to be? You know? But, I mean, again, they're playing against the Panthers, so, you know, and I know the Panthers just put up 30 points, but it's against the Packers defense, which isn't good at all. The Packers are making everybody look good, including Bryce Young, who's had a rough rookie season. So we'll see how Bryce Young is, you know, against this Jags defense. But the Jags, they really gotta figure it out because, again, they could find themselves on the outside looking in. And that would be very disappointing if that ends up happening, especially because of how the season started. And it looked like, hey, they got a chance at maybe getting this number 1 seed the way Kansas City's been playing. You know, I mean, they lost to the Ravens, you know, last week. But, yeah, it's just, you know, losing in overtime to the Bengals, Trevor Lawrence getting hurt. It hasn't been good. Has not been good. And Trevor Lawrence is turning the ball over a lot, too. And again, that could also the fact that he's not 100%. I mean, you got to factor that in, too. You know, turned it over a lot against the Browns. Had 3 interceptions again here against Tampa. I mean, they were never in this game. I mean, Tampa, they dominated this game from start to finish. So, you know, we'll see. But, listen, I'm happy for Baker. I hope this run continues. I mean, I don't think it's going to go very far once they get to the playoffs, but you know what? I'm going to enjoy it, and I hope that, you know, we see the Bucs upset, you know, one of the NFC East teams that they could possibly face in the first round. Because, I mean, they're not getting any further than the 4 seed. That's what they're basically locked into if they make the playoffs. So they're going to play either the Eagles or the Cowboys. And we'll see. I mean, listen, they lost to the Cowboys last year, and that was with Brady at quarterback. You know, so we'll see, you know, what happens this year. Not saying that the Bucs have a better chance with Baker at quarterback, but, you know, we'll see. We'll see. Or it could be the Eagles. And the Bucs already played the Eagles this year, and they lost by a couple of scores. So, but they got to win the division first. And, again, big game against the Saints. And the Saints have not looked great. They haven't. And the Bucs already beat them. But I think that'll be a very competitive game. But right now I'm leaning towards the Bucs. I haven't picked them, you know, in a couple of weeks. So, you know, now I'm going to pick them and they'll probably lose. Because the reason why they've been on this winning streak is because I haven't picked them. I mean, I did pick them against the Panthers, but the Panthers covered. So, we'll see. We'll see. Like I've been saying, it's gonna be a wild final 2 weeks. We're in week 17. I can't believe that. So, but yeah, with that is all the time that we have for today. Once again, I thank you guys for tuning in, for watching. Tomorrow, we'll preview. Obviously, the Thursday night game, the Jets and the Browns will get us started in Week 17, so we'll talk about that. We'll look at the playoff picture. We'll look at all the conferences, both conferences, where everything's at currently. You know, the power rankings. We'll take a look at that. So, yeah, and then make sure to look out for the shorts that'll be throughout the day, released throughout the day, and I'll make sure to have the show reposted. We'll also post it up on wherever you get your podcasts as well. So if you want to just go back and listen to the full show, you could do that as well. But yeah, until then, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.